The man of ice Harrison Frost stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, gazing at Seattle spread beneath him like a model city he could rearrange at will. Rain streaked the glass, distorting the lights below into watery smears of color. The weather matched his mood, cold, relentless, isolating. "The Davies deal is collapsing," said a voice behind him. Harrison didn't turn. He recognized the nervous tremor in his CFO's voice. "And they're requesting more time to consider the terms. We gave them time." Harrison's voice remained level, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Tell them they have until noon tomorrow. After that, we execute Plan B." "But, sir, that would—" "Destroy them? Yes." Harrison finally turned, his steel-gray eyes meeting the CFO's. That was their risk when they decided to negotiate with Frost Technologies. "My terms were clear." The CFO nodded and hurried from the room, likely grateful to escape. Harrison returned to his contemplation of the city. At 42, he had built an empire from nothing, transforming a small software startup into a tech giant through sheer determination and an unwavering belief that sentiment had no place in business. Or life. His phone buzzed. The housekeeper at his Lake Washington estate was calling. Unusual. Harrison almost declined before curiosity won out. "Yes?" "Mr. Frost, this is Mrs. Sullivan. There's been an incident with one of the staff." "Handle it," he replied, already moving to end the call. "Sir, I thought you should know because it's Eliza Morgan, the one who manages your personal quarters." Harrison paused. The quiet one with the auburn hair who somehow managed to keep his living space immaculate without ever being noticed. "What happened?" "She's requested 2 days off. First time in 3 years. Family emergency. And this requires my attention." "Because?" "Your schedule indicates you're hosting the governor on Friday. Eliza is the only one who knows how to prepare everything to your specifications." Harrison felt a flicker of irritation. "Fine. Tell her to return by Thursday afternoon." That evening, Harrison's driver delivered him to his sprawling modernist mansion overlooking the lake. Rain continued to pour, casting a gloomy pall over the meticulously landscaped grounds. Inside, the house was silent, save for the subtle hum of climate control systems maintaining the perfect temperature. Harrison moved through the space, finding everything in its proper place as always. In his home office, he noticed a small ornamental plant had been moved slightly from its usual position. A minor detail, but in Harrison's ordered world, even millimeters mattered. He buzzed for Mrs. Sullivan. "Who's been in my office?" "Olivia." "Is covering for Eliza today, sir." Harrison frowned. "Tell her not to touch anything in here again. And inform Eliza that her replacement is inadequate." Later that night, as Harrison reviewed acquisition proposals in his study, he heard a soft sound from the hallway. Stepping out, he found a young woman gathering cleaning supplies that had scattered across the marble floor. "I'm sorry, Mr. Frost," she said, not meeting his eyes. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "You're not Olivia," he observed. "No, sir. I'm Eliza Morgan. Mrs. Sullivan called me in. I understand the governor is coming." Harrison studied her. She was thinner than he remembered, with shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I thought you had a family emergency." "It's being managed, sir." She continued collecting her supplies, but her hands trembled slightly. "Your replacement moved things in my office. I'll fix it immediately." As she rose, Harrison noticed how she steadied herself against the wall. "Are you ill?" "No, sir. Just tired." He should have walked away. Harrison Frost didn't concern himself with the personal problems of household staff. Yet something, perhaps the way she refused to complain, or how she clearly pushed through whatever was troubling her, made him pause. "What's the nature of your family emergency?" Surprise flickered across her face before she composed herself. "My brother Theo. He has multiple sclerosis and needs specialized treatment." The insurance denied coverage for his new medication. Harrison nodded once. I see. Finish quickly and go home. Be back tomorrow. He returned to his study, unsettled by the brief interaction. Harrison had built his reputation on decisive action and emotional detachment. People were resources, valuable when useful, replaceable when not. Yet as he attempted to focus on the documents before him, his thoughts kept returning to the quiet dignity in Eliza's exhausted eyes. The man of ice felt the first imperceptible crack. The moment of truth. 3 days later, Harrison returned to his estate well after midnight. A rare Seattle thunderstorm had grounded his private jet in Portland for hours, leaving him irritable and exhausted. The quarterly board meeting had gone. As expected, Frost Technologies was devouring its competitors with precision, and shareholders were pleased. But Harrison found himself oddly disconnected from the triumph, as if watching someone else receive the accolades he'd once craved. The house was dark except for the subtle landscape lighting illuminating the rain-slicked pathways. Harrison dismissed his driver and entered through the side entrance, preferring to avoid waking the minimal night staff. As he moved through the dimly lit corridor toward the main staircase, lightning flashed, briefly illuminating a figure slumped against the wall. Harrison froze, then approached cautiously. Another flash revealed Eliza, crumpled on the floor beside her cleaning cart, eyes closed and breathing shallow. Her skin had a waxy pallor that alarmed him. "Eliza?" He knelt beside her, touching her shoulder. When she didn't respond, he checked her pulse, rapid and weak. Without hesitation, Harrison gathered her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, a fact that registered with surprising clarity as he carried her to his car. The rational part of his mind suggested calling an ambulance, but some unfamiliar instinct pushed him to act immediately. As he drove through the storm toward Northwest Hospital, Harrison glanced at Eliza's unconscious form in his passenger seat. He'd built his empire by treating people as interchangeable parts in a vast machine. Why was this different? Why did the sight of this particular employee's collapse trigger such an immediate response? The emergency room staff rushed forward as Harrison carried Eliza through the doors. "She collapsed at my home," he explained tersely. "She's been working excessive hours." A doctor, Dr. Winters according to her badge, directed him to place Eliza on a gurney. "Are you family?" "I'm her employer." Dr. Winters gave him an appraising look. "And you brought her yourself?" Something in her tone made Harrison straighten defensively. "Yes. Is that relevant to her treatment?" "No, just unusual." She turned to the nurses. "Start an IV with fluids. Get a CBC, metabolic panel, and check her glucose." Harrison found himself directed to a waiting area. He should leave, call his assistant to handle this situation, return to important matters requiring his attention. Instead, he sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, his tailored suit incongruous among the worried families in casual clothes. An hour passed. Harrison answered emails on his phone but found himself checking the doors to the treatment area with increasing frequency. Finally, Dr. Winters emerged. "Ms. Morgan is stabilized," she said without preamble. "Severe dehydration, exhaustion, and hypoglycemia. Has she been ill recently?" "Not that I'm aware of," Harrison replied, then added, "She mentioned a family situation. Her brother has MS." Dr. Winters nodded. "She told us. Apparently she's been working 3 jobs to cover his care costs. When was the last time she ate a proper meal?" The question caught Harrison off guard. "I wouldn't know." "Well, according to her, she's been skipping meals to save money and time between jobs. Her body finally gave out." Harrison absorbed this information with growing discomfort. "Will she recover?" "With rest and proper nutrition, yes. She needs at least a week off work." "She'll have it, with pay." The words emerged before Harrison could analyze them. Dr. Winters seemed surprised. "Good. She's asking about leaving tonight. Worried. About missing work tomorrow, I've told her that's not possible. Can I see her? Minutes later, Harrison stood beside a hospital bed where Eliza lay connected to an IV. She looked even smaller, surrounded by medical equipment, her auburn hair spread across the institutional pillow. Mr. Frost, she struggled to sit up. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. I'll make up the time. Stop. Harrison raised his hand. You collapsed because you've been working yourself to death. Why? Eliza's eyes dropped. Theo's treatments cost $4,800 a month. The insurance covers less than half. The amount struck Harrison as absurdly small. What he spent on a business dinner without thought. And you work 3 jobs to cover this? Yes. Mornings at a cafe, evenings at your estate, and I do remote data entry overnight when I can. She attempted a smile. Usually I manage fine. Until you collapse. Harrison's voice was flat. I miscalculated this week. Theo had a bad episode, so I stayed up with him. Harrison found himself studying her face, the determination in her eyes despite her exhaustion, the absence of self-pity. Something unfamiliar stirred in him, an emotion he couldn't immediately identify. You have the week off. Paid. Mr. Frost, I can't accept. It's not a request, Eliza. He pulled out his phone and sent a brief message. I've instructed my assistant to arrange for your brother's medical bills to be covered through the company's Employee Assistance Fund. Her eyes widened. Why would you do that? Harrison considered the question. The truth was, he didn't entirely understand his own actions. Efficient staff are a valuable resource. Your current arrangement is unsustainable. Tears filled her eyes. Thank you. Uncomfortable with her gratitude, Harrison nodded curtly. Rest. I expect you back at full capacity next week. As he turned to leave, Eliza called after him. You carried me to your car. Harrison paused at the door. Yes. You could have called an ambulance or had someone else handle it. He met her gaze. I could have. Why didn't you? Harrison stood silently for a moment, genuinely perplexed by his own behavior. I don't know, he finally admitted, and left. During the drive home, Harrison found himself troubled by the night's events, not by Eliza's condition, that was being addressed, but by his own uncharacteristic response. The man who had built walls around every emotion since childhood had acted instinctively, without calculation. As dawn broke over Seattle, Harrison Frost sat in his study, the acquisition proposals forgotten on his desk. For the first time in decades, he questioned the foundation upon which he'd built his life. The belief that detachment was strength, that humanity was weakness, and somewhere in the hospital, Eliza Morgan slept, unaware that her collapse had shaken the unshakable. Unexpected warmth. 10 days after the hospital incident, Harrison found himself noticing things he'd previously overlooked. The way morning. Light filtered through the east windows of his study. The subtle fragrance of lemon and cedar that lingered after Eliza cleaned his private quarters. The careful arrangement of fresh flowers in the entry foyer, always blue hydrangeas, his preference, though he couldn't recall ever mentioning it. Harrison sat at his desk reviewing quarterly projections when Mrs. Sullivan appeared in the doorway. Mr. Frost, shall I have Eliza delay tidying your study until this evening? Harrison glanced up. No, send her in. I'll work while she cleans. Mrs. Sullivan's expression betrayed momentary surprise before she schooled her features back to professional neutrality. As you wish, sir. Minutes later, Eliza entered carrying her supplies. She moved with more vitality than before her collapse, though still with the quiet efficiency that had initially made her valuable staff. Good morning, Mr. Frost. She kept her voice low, clearly intending to be unobtrusive. How is your brother? Harrison asked, not looking up from his tablet. The question halted her mid-step. Much better, thank you. The new medication is making a significant difference. Harrison nodded once. Good. He returned to his work but found his attention diverted as she moved methodically around the room. Her movements were precise, almost choreographed, dusting each surface in a specific sequence, adjusting items by millimeters to their proper alignment. You understand my preferences, he observed. Eliza glanced over. I pay attention. Most people don't. Most people are afraid to look closely at you, Mr. Frost. The words escaped before she could censor them, and her eyes widened slightly. Rather than being offended, Harrison found himself intrigued. And you're not? She considered the question while carefully repositioning a sculpture. I was at first, but after working here for 3 years, I realized something. What's that? The more particular someone is about their environment, the more they need order to feel secure. She met his gaze directly. Fear isn't helpful in providing that. The insight unsettled him. An interesting theory. Just an observation. She continued her work, leaving Harrison to wonder when this quiet housekeeper had begun to see through his carefully constructed facade. Later that week, Harrison returned from a contentious executive meeting to find his home kitchen unexpectedly occupied. Eliza stood at the counter arranging something on a tray. I thought your shift ended at 4, he said. She turned, clearly, startled. Mr. Frost, yes, normally it does, I was just... She gestured to the tray, which held a pot of tea, a single cup, and a small plate of shortbread cookies. Mrs. Sullivan mentioned you had a difficult meeting today. I thought you might appreciate this in your study. Harrison approached, examining the arrangement. Earl Grey, strong, no milk. Your preference. How did you know? A small smile touched her lips. Like I said, I pay attention. The cookies? Lavender shortbread, my grandmother's recipe. She hesitated. If you'd prefer something else... No, Harrison interrupted. This is acceptable. Late hour. You're off duty, he observed. She looked up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The east beds needed attention, and I know you have guests this weekend. You could have handled it tomorrow. The light is perfect now. She gestured toward the sunset reflecting off the lake. Sometimes timing matters more than convenience. Harrison found himself walking alongside her as she worked, listening as she explained the different varieties of roses and their needs. Her knowledge was extensive, her passion evident in the way her hands moved as she spoke. You should be managing the entire grounds, not just the interior, he said abruptly. Eliza paused, secateurs in hand. I enjoy the gardens, but I'm hardly qualified. You're more qualified than the service currently handling it. Harrison surveyed the immaculate rose beds. Consider it a promotion, with appropriate compensation adjustment. Mr. Frost, Harrison, he corrected, surprising them both. Harrison, she repeated, his name sounding different in her voice. Why are you doing this? He considered the woman before him, intelligent, observant, dedicated. In any other context, someone with her qualities would be an executive, not household staff. The inequity suddenly seemed absurd. Because you deserve recognition for excellence. Isn't that what everyone wants? Eliza studied him for a long moment, the fading sunlight illuminating her features. No. What everyone wants is to be seen. Truly seen, she gestured to the roses. These matter to you, so they matter to me. That's worth more than recognition. As twilight descended over the garden, Harrison Frost, who had built an empire on the principle that people were merely functional components in a system, found himself facing an uncomfortable truth. He had begun to see Eliza Morgan not as an employee, but as a person whose presence had somehow become essential to his world. And for a man who had eliminated vulnerability from his life, that realization was terrifying. The storm. The first raindrops of autumn struck the windows of Frost Technologies' executive boardroom as Harrison concluded his presentation. The Davies acquisition had exceeded projections, adding 30% to their market valuation in just 2 months. Faces around the polished table showed varying degrees of satisfaction, with one notable exception. Julian Vega leaned back in his chair, stylus tapping against his tablet. Impressive results, Harrison, though I wonder if we might have pushed for more aggressive terms. The terms were appropriate, Harrison replied, his tone measured. Davies retained their R&D leadership, which was critical to preserving their innovation pipeline. A year ago, you would have gutted their executive team and absorbed the assets. Julian's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're developing a soft touch. The subtle challenge hung in the air. Board members shifted uncomfortably, accustomed to the ruthless alignment between Frost and Vega that had characterized their leadership for 15 years. Results speak for themselves, Harrison said, closing his presentation folder. Davies' team is performing beyond expectations because they chose to join us rather than being forced. The meeting adjourned, but Julian lingered as others filed out. When they were alone, he approached Harrison at the window. Something's changed with you, he said without preamble. Harrison watched the rain trace patterns down the glass. Evolution isn't change, Julian. It's adaptation. Call it what you want. The board is noticing. So are our competitors. Julian moved into Harrison's line of sight. Is it the housekeeper? Harrison's expression remained impassive, though something cold settled in his stomach. What exactly are you implying? Don't play naive. You've restructured your entire household staff to elevate her position. You commissioned a custom greenhouse on your property that matches specifications she casually mentioned. Your assistant tells me you've adjusted your schedule to be home for dinner most nights. Julian's eyes narrowed. People are talking, Harrison. People always talk. It rarely concerns me. It should now. Riverton Media reached out to my office this morning. They're running a feature on Tech's most eligible bachelor and heard rumors about you and a member of your household staff. Julian's voice lowered. This isn't just about your personal life. It affects the company's image, our stock price, my investment. Harrison turned from the window, his gaze hardening. There's nothing inappropriate happening in my household. But there is something, Julian pressed. I've known you too long, Harrison. The Harrison Frost I built this company with wouldn't notice his housekeeper if she set the building on fire, let alone restructure his life around her comfort. Perhaps that Harrison Frost was missing something important. Julian studied him for a long moment. Whatever this is, handle it. Discreetly. He moved toward the door. The board meeting next month includes your leadership review. I suggest you have your priorities straight by then. That evening, Harrison's car crawled through unusually heavy traffic. Rain continued to pour, transforming Seattle's streets into reflecting pools of headlights and neon. His thoughts churned with Julian's warning and the implications behind it. When he finally arrived home, the house seemed unusually quiet. Harrison found Mrs. Sullivan in the kitchen, reviewing staff schedules. Where is Eliza? Mrs. Sullivan glanced up, her expression carefully neutral. She requested to speak with you in the library, sir. Harrison found her standing by the fireplace, gazing at the flames. The room's warm lighting softened her features, but couldn't hide the tension in her posture. Eliza, she turned, a sad smile touching her lips. Harrison, thank you for meeting with me. What's wrong? I received a strange call today. She clasped her hands together. A reporter from Riverton Media, asking about our relationship. Harrison's jaw tightened. What did you tell them? That I work for you. That you're a fair employer who values excellence. She looked down. They didn't believe me. They implied other things. Ignore them. It will pass. Will it? Eliza's eyes met his. Harrison, this isn't just about some tabloid story. I've seen the way Mr. Vega looks at me when he visits. I've heard the whispers among the staff. Your reputation is being affected by whatever this is between us. And what exactly is this between us, Eliza? Harrison asked, moving closer. She stepped back slightly. I don't know, that's part of the problem. Then let me clarify. Harrison's voice remained calm, though his heart raced in an unfamiliar rhythm. I value your presence, your perspective, your company. I'm your employee. Yes, and more. Eliza shook her head. That's why I need to leave. The words struck Harrison with physical force. Leave? I've typed my resignation letter. She pulled an envelope from her pocket. 2 weeks' notice. Though I understand if you prefer I leave immediately. Harrison didn't take the envelope. This is unnecessary. It's the only solution. Her voice wavered slightly. Your entire world is built on perception, Harrison. The cold, brilliant tech mogul who transformed an industry through sheer force of will. What happens to that world if people believe you've fallen for your housekeeper? I don't care what people believe. You should. Your board members, your shareholders, your business partners, they all invested in Harrison Frost, the man of ice. Not whoever you're becoming. Harrison stepped forward, eliminating the distance between them. And who am I becoming? Someone who notices when the roses need pruning. Who asks about my brother's health and remembers the details? Who brings me coffee exactly how I like it when I'm working late? Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Someone who might care for me. And if I do, then you'll let me go. She pressed the envelope into his hand. Because I won't be the reason Harrison Frost loses everything he's built. Harrison stared at the envelope, feeling something fracture inside him. You think leaving protects me. What if it destroys me instead? The Harrison Frost I first met would never have asked that question. She reached up, her fingertips lightly touching his cheek in a gesture so tender it almost undid him. That's how I know this is right. She stepped away, moving toward the yai. Doctor, I'll finish this week, then Olivia will take over your quarters. After she left, Harrison remained motionless by the fire, the resignation letter heavy in his hand. Outside, the storm intensified, rain lashing against the windows with growing fury. His phone buzzed with Julian's name on the screen. Simultaneously, an email notification appeared. Riverton Media requesting comment on their upcoming story. The carefully constructed world he had built over decades was suddenly under siege from all sides. Harrison moved to his desk and opened his laptop. The Frost Technologies logo pulsed on the screen, symbol of everything he had achieved and everything he stood to lose. With a few keystrokes, he could protect it all. Issue a statement denying any impropriety. Transfer Eliza to another property. Maintain the walls he had built around himself. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. The rational choice was clear, the business decision obvious. Yet as rain drummed against the windows and thunder rolled across the lake, Harrison Frost confronted a truth he could no longer escape. For the first time in his life, his heart and his mind were at war. Just Harrison. Spring's arrival. The morning of the board meeting dawned clear after a week of relentless storms. Harrison stood at his bedroom window watching sunrise illuminate the Olympic Mountains across the Sound. His reflection showed a man transformed, not just by the charcoal suit that replaced his usual navy, but by something fundamental in his expression. 7 days had passed since Eliza's resignation letter. 7 days of careful consideration and sleepless nights. 7 days of Julian's increasing pressure and media speculation. 7 days of passing Eliza in hallways, both of them maintaining professional distance while something unspoken hung. Between them, Harrison's phone chimed with a reminder: board meeting, 9 a.m., leadership review. Downstairs, he found Eliza in the kitchen arranging a breakfast tray, her final morning of service before her departure tomorrow. "Good morning," he said quietly. She looked up, her composure faltering briefly before professionalism reasserted itself. "Good morning, Mr. Frost. I've prepared your usual breakfast." The formality stung more than he expected. Back to Mr. Frost. "Are we?" "I thought it appropriate, given the circumstances." She adjusted a napkin on the tray with unnecessary precision. "And what circumstances are those, exactly?" Eliza sighed, finally meeting his gaze directly. "Your board meeting today, the Riverton media article scheduled for tomorrow. My departure. Take your pick." Harrison moved closer, noticing how she tensed slightly. "Have you read the article draft?" "No. Though I imagine it's quite sensational." Her attempt at lightness failed. "Harrison, please. We've been through this. Nothing has changed." "Everything has changed." He reached for her hand, surprised when she didn't pull away. "Including me?" "That's what I'm afraid of." Her voice softened. "You built an empire on being unchangeable, the immovable force in a world of compromise." Perhaps I was wrong. A sad smile touched her lips. "The world doesn't forgive men like you for being wrong, especially about someone like me." Harrison's driver texted his arrival. Still holding Eliza's hand, he made a decision that had been forming since the moment he'd found her collapsed in his hallway. "Come with me today." Her eyes widened. "To your board meeting? That's impossible." "Not to the meeting, but after." He tightened his grip slightly. "Trust me, Eliza. One last time." The Frost Technologies headquarters dominated Seattle's skyline, a tower of glass and steel reflecting clouds and sky, deliberately separate from the world below. Harrison moved through the lobby with Eliza beside him, aware of curious glances from employees who had never seen their CEO with a companion. "Wait in my office," he instructed, leading her to his private elevator. "I'll come for you when it's time." The boardroom fell silent as Harrison entered. 14 faces turned toward him, the collective stewards of an empire worth billions. Julian sat at the far end, his expression carefully neutral. "Gentlemen, ladies." Harrison took his place, at the head of the table. "Shall we begin?" The meeting proceeded through its agenda with practiced efficiency: quarterly reports, market projections, competitive analysis. Harrison participated with his usual precision, though his thoughts occasionally drifted to the woman waiting in his office 20 floors above. Finally, they reached the leadership review. Julian stood, assuming his role as head of the governance committee. "Before we begin the formal review, I believe there's an elephant in the room we should address." His gaze fixed on Harrison. "The rumors concerning your personal life, Harrison, and their potential impact on this company." Board members shifted uncomfortably. Harrison remained impassive. "Specifically," Julian continued, "your relationship with a household employee, which has become fodder for tomorrow's news cycle. The board has concerns about potential reputational damage and leadership distraction." "I see." Harrison stood slowly. "And what would the board suggest as a remedy?" Julian produced a document. "We've prepared a statement denying any improper relationship, announcing the employee's reassignment to another property, and reaffirming your commitment to the company's growth strategy." Harrison accepted the paper, scanning its contents with a slight smile. "Efficient? Clean? Precisely what I would have recommended a year ago." "And now?" Julian prompted. Harrison placed the document on the table. "Now I find I can no longer compartmentalize my life so neatly." He looked around the room, meeting each board member's gaze. "For 15 years, I've built this company on a simple premise: efficiency above all. People as resources to be optimized. Emotions as liabilities to be eliminated. He moved to the window, looking out at the city below. I was wrong. The silence in the room deepened. Julian's brow furrowed. Harrison. Let me finish, Julian. Harrison turned back to the board. The Davies acquisition succeeded not because we stripped away humanity, but because we recognized it. Their team thrived because we valued their expertise rather than replacing it. Their innovation accelerated because they wanted to be part of what we're building. That's business strategy, not personal indulgence, Julian countered. Is it? Harrison raised an eyebrow. Or is it the same principle? Recognizing value in unexpected places, seeing people, truly seeing them, rather than merely their utility. He pressed a button on his phone. Send her in, he instructed his assistant. Minutes later, the boardroom door opened. Eliza entered, clearly uncomfortable under the collective scrutiny of Frost Technologies' leadership. She wore simple business attire, a modest dress that Harrison recognized from their trip to the hospital months ago. Board members, this is Eliza Morgan. Julian's expression darkened. This is inappropriate, Harrison. On the contrary. Harrison gestured for Eliza to join him. Ms. Morgan has recently completed her MBA through night classes while working 3 jobs to support her disabled brother. Her thesis on sustainable business practices won her department's highest honors. Surprise flickered across several board members' faces. Eliza stood straighter, her chin lifting slightly. Furthermore, Harrison continued, her background in horticulture and environmental science gives her unique insight into our new sustainability initiative. He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. Which is why I'm appointing her as Director of Environmental Innovation, effective immediately. Julian slammed his hand on the table. You can't simply create a position for your... My what, Julian? Harrison's voice remained measured. My employee who collapsed from exhaustion because our society undervalues essential work. My colleague whose insights have transformed my approach to leadership. Or perhaps you meant something else entirely? Eliza stepped forward. If I may. Her voice was quiet but steady. I didn't ask for this position. In fact, I resigned from Mr. Frost's household staff precisely to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Then why are you here? Asked Patricia Winters, the board's senior member. Because Harrison asked me to trust him. Eliza met the older woman's gaze directly. And because I believe in what Frost Technologies could become, not just a company that builds technology, but one that uses technology to build a better world. Patricia studied her for a long moment, then turned to Harrison. And what exactly are you proposing here, Mr. Frost? 2 things. Harrison moved to stand beside Eliza. First, that we create the Environmental Innovation Division with Ms. Morgan, at its head, reporting directly to the COO. Her credentials more than qualify her for the position, and her perspective will be valuable as we navigate increasing environmental regulations. And second? Julian asked, skepticism evident. Second, Harrison took a deep breath, that the board accept my resignation as CEO, effective 1 month from today. Gasps and murmurs erupted around the table. Eliza turned to him in shock. Harrison, no, he raised his hand. My decision is made. I'll remain as chairman and chief strategist, but it's time for new leadership. His gaze settled on the company's COO, Rebecca Jang. Leadership that understands what I've only recently learned. That humanity is our greatest asset, not our greatest liability. Julian pushed away from the table. This is absurd. You're throwing away everything we've built because of what? Some midlife crisis? Some romanticized notion about a woman who was cleaning your house 3 months ago? No, Julian. Harrison's voice hardened. I'm evolving our company because of what Eliza helped me see. That the path we've been on leads to technology without purpose and profit without meaning. The boardroom erupted in heated discussion. Through it all, Harrison remained calm, his hand finding Eliza's and holding it firmly. When the initial shock subsided, he addressed the board once more. Vote if you must, But understand this, the world is changing. Companies that value only the bottom line will be left behind. I intend for Frost Technologies to lead that change, not resist it. He turned to Eliza. Shall we? Together, they left the boardroom, ignoring Julian's protests and the board's confusion. In the elevator, Eliza finally found her voice. You're giving up your company? For me? Harrison pressed the button for the lobby rather than his office. No, Eliza. I'm transforming my company. For us both. He turned to her. The question is, are you willing to be part of that transformation? The elevator doors opened to the soaring lobby. Through the glass facade, Seattle spread before them, not as a model city to be controlled, but as a living community to be engaged with. Somewhere I should have taken you months ago.